morning. Thank you for staying tuned to Citizen TV on this 11th day of December 2023. My mind is in last month. I'm reminded it's 20 days to the end of the year. And it's time I want to introduce the panelists that are here in studio. I have the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Gladys Boss. Good morning.
Good morning.
Robert Mbui is the Deputy Minority Leader of the National Assembly. Good morning.
Morning, Sam.
Diana Gishengo is the National Coordinator of the Institute of Social Accountability. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam, and good morning, Kenyans.
And I have Eden Kenan, who is the Member of Parliament for Eldas constituency. Good morning.
Good morning, viewers.
Right, and you're here to walk through the year 2023. A very interesting year it has been, whether it comes to the questions of politics. It is the year that we saw some members of the Azimio coalition drifting away, for instance, Jubilee drifting away, a section of it, working with the Kenya Kwanza administration, some members of the ODM working with the government and being dealt a blow by their own party. But also it is the year of the affordable housing, the housing levy. It is the year of the judiciary giving some few judgments against the government when it comes to the appointment of the CASs. It is also the year that the CBC transitioned to the second level of the junior secondary school. It is also the year of the Shakahola massacre and so much more, all this in 12 months. And you're here to take a look at that. But also this morning on the Dailies, Treasury claims it's broke. Experts say it's all about wastage, the luxury. That's on the front page of the Standard. On the Daily Nation, the big story is Raila under siege. Azimio leader Raila Odinga is a man under pressure. Some of his coalition allies have refused to support his decision to endorse the Bomas talks report over its failure to include ways of cutting taxes to bring down the cost of living. Those are the major stories that are covered in the two dailies. But I want us to start by having a look at what Parliament has been able to do. And I have three members of Parliament, including their Deputy Speaker. Let me begin with you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. When you look at the work that Parliament has been able to do, there has been this accusation that they're just a rubber stamping house for the executive. But in reflection of the needs that have been brought to the House by the executive and the role Parliament should be playing and the arrangement politically, what we have that the opposition feels it has been weakened deliberately by the government, what would be your comment in rating Parliament?
I think all said and done, this particular Parliament has passed more legislation in 1 year than we did in the last 4 years. That I can confirm. And
a whole 4 years or annually?
Sorry? No, in the last 4 years, the previous Parliament, in 4 years, there was really not much activity happening in Parliament. That was
so you say the laws passed this year is more than the total of the past 4?
Yes, in terms of laws that actually impact on Kenya, impact on the Wananchi. Because, for example, when you look at it, it's all been about whatever the Kenya Kwanza government promised the public. If you look at housing, looking at health, looking at the issues dealing with devolution and so on, those have actually, there's been deliberate laws to try and implement what was promised to Kenyans. That is a very, very big difference compared to the past Parliament where I sat.
Okay. And for you, Honourable Mbui, the opposition has throughout the year complained that they don't feel like their voice is being heard in the House because it's just about passing what the executive wants.
Yes,
what is your assessment, especially on the performance of the minority side?
Sam, let me just talk about generally the House. I think I've been in the National Assembly. This is my 3rd term. I want to differ with with the Deputy Speaker because this particular Parliament, members of this Parliament don't seem to know that they're supposed to be representing the people that elected them to Parliament. And that's why you saw that after the elections, when Azimio was a majority in terms of the number of members that were elected under Azimio, many of them trooped to the side of the government, because they don't even understand that one of the jobs they have is to represent the people. The other job they have is to actually hold the government or the executive to account. Now, you notice that just last week I had raised an issue with the CS for transport. It had to do with the issue of distribution of roads, you know, the funds that he had given out for roads around the country. And he came to the House to answer. And one of the things that the CS said is that actually this distribution of these funds is done in the House, which we have always told our members. Even those that left Azimio and went to Kenya Kwanza, we told them, it is you who actually appropriates funds. So you cannot tell us that you're defecting so that you can go to the other side so that the executive can be able to do for you favors. Because the executive is not the one that passes the budgets. So unfortunately, I think this parliament has failed in understanding the roles of members of parliament, and unfortunately also in representing the people that have put them in the House. And let me say that as a result of that, you know, Sam, we are facing very dire straits. You know, Kenya now is suffering because of the high cost of living. Some of the things, some of the heavy... It's a members understanding their roles. Because what has happened is that members, some of our members seem to think that we are still at that time when we had a parliamentary system. You know, now we are on a presidential system.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. The president can be William Ruto of Kenya Kwanza and have a minority in the House, and he can still run his government, because those things those things that make sense, we can agree. Unfortunately, the executive has raided parliament and neutered parliament completely, Sam, and parliament cannot function. Cannot function. I mean, there are some things I would have said about what goes on in the House, but it's a very unfortunate. I think this has been the worst parliament. I've served 3 terms. This is the worst one.
But despite, because you said that the executive has raided parliament and taken away members of the opposition, those that remained, do they understand what they're supposed to do?
Yes, Sam.
In the minority side?
Yes, Sam, I will tell you that we understand what you're supposed to do. But you see, Parliament is also a democratic house. So the minority will have their say, but the majority will always have their way. And that's why we're having this problem.
How eloquent has the minority side been?
How
eloquent has the minority side been?
Some we have been vocal. We have made our contributions known. Unfortunately, when it comes to voting, and let me tell you, what has been happening is that a bill comes to the floor, and it is something that we feel that we don't want to support, because it has, you know, it has very negative implications on the Kenyan economy and the Kenyan people. But you will find one person who will move that bill, a person will second it, and somebody will rise up from the majority side and say, you know, let's put the question. Unfortunately, the speaker's hands are tied, so they will ask the House, do you feel we should put the question? They will say yes, and a question will be put on a matter that is important without debate. This is outrageous. I mean, why were people elected to parliament? If there is a way we can shut this house down, we go back and do an election. I would be the first one actually to have advocated for it, and I'm an elected member. I don't think we are doing justice to the Kenyan people, and this has been the worst disaster. 2023 has been the worst year in the history of parliament in Kenya.
I'll get to you, and I'll get to you, Diana. I almost said Honorable Diana. But Honorable Kenan, you're one of those that are said to have shifted. Actually, you have, because you now work with the Kenya Kwanza. I think I saw you in a meeting early in the year at State House. But first of all, why did that happen, and how did that affect how you do your work as a legislator, not necessarily just voting here and there?
Thank you. I think that's a very good question. You need to understand the workings of Parliament first. Parliament represents the people. And that is why during elections, people fight for numbers. Parties strive to have as many members as possible through their manifesto and through other means. For Azimio, unfortunately, everything was anchored on a false narrative. False narrative that put this aside, we'll sort it out after the election. I'll tell you for Jubilee. Jubilee is the 3rd largest party. And luckily right now, we are a parliamentary party. I asked my good friend, and you know he's one of the most sober guys, even the position that he occupies actually is for Jubilee. That position, the deputy minority leader in Azimio was supposed to be for Jubilee. And I'll tell you the tricks and deceits and the falsehoods that took place in Azimio. That's why we in Jubilee said, no, we cannot be cheated in a broad daylight. We have 34 members. You can ask Wiper has how many members. So after ODM in the opposition at that particular time, the second largest party was Jubilee. They took our slots, both in PSC, deputy minority leader and all that, and yet they expected us just to sit somewhere and clap for them. And the reason were just two. Maybe they were so disappointed with the former leadership of Jubilee that did not deliver the presidency. So they took everything. That's why we had to sit down and say, look, can we be party to a group at the beginning of the term who are hell-bent on deceiving us, who are hell-bent on applying all tricks on that? And we just pulled out and say, look, can we fight for our rights as individual members of parliament and collectively as Jubilee members of our parliamentary group? And that is what we did. You can look at what has happened in the Senate, in the National Assembly. That is what led to. So we had to invoke that purported coalition agreement, which was not there. I've never seen it. And yet, you know, I was the person who was in charge of coalition affairs in Jubilee. I've never seen it. Nobody has yet to see, even the speaker, in making that decision of which party constitutes the majority and minority, alluded that he did not see that agreement. So under that, we pulled out. We said, we'll apply our conscience. If the government is doing good, we'll support. We refused to sanction the mandamando, and that was our main disagreement. Luckily, since then, we applied, we invoked the constitution, we invoked the political parties, dispute resolution mechanism, and we said we must be recognized. Luckily, we are recognized. We are now the third largest party, and very soon we'll be claiming some of our positions. Actually, we have already claimed our whip. We're in the process of claiming our PSC slot, and I can tell you the axe will fall on a Wiper member who was also duped.
How do you do that? Can you remove?
We will invoke the law. The law is not the law. We will invoke the law. Wait for this. We will invoke the law.
Let me.
So the reason is this.
Yep.
The fact that parties made decisions, because what we used was blackmail, coercion, intrigues, and say, look, this is not where we are supposed to be. I think that is the right. The other bit, I've been in many other parliaments. I think my friend here, I know he's a very sober guy, a very good guy. I think it's very unfair to dismiss this parliament. It's still 1 year. It is the wrong time to apply both formative and summative evaluation of parliament. The fact that parliament didn't deliver, the majority didn't do things as you expected, you don't have to rubbish the entire 13th parliament. I'll tell you this. Look at the Committee on Roads. It has 15 members. 8 from the majority. 7 from the minority. Where is the minority, their minority report to support what the Honorable Murkomen has said? It is not true. All the members, all the reports were unanimous. So this is Johnny come late. If truly they had an issue with the way these things were done, why have they, even as a member of parliament, one member of parliament, you can table a minority report and say, look, because this is what the majority have decided, this is my take. That is why in parliament...
Honorable Kenan, I wanted to get to the point was because you're saying that you're going now to claim your positions, including the Parliamentary Service Commission, but how does being declared a parliamentary party, how has it helped you to become a better legislator, but also as a party?
In fact,
make your voice.
Every day we're under the threat of being de-whipped by Azimio. Now we can't be de-whipped. They cannot de-whip us. It's us as Jubilee to decide based on the ratio. Azimio with their group, Kenya Kwanza with their group, Jubilee as so we get our numbers proportionately. But in the past,
I have seen you attending Kenya Kwanza City.
Let me explain this to you. We have the right to associate with any group that canvasses what we think is good. And for us as Jubilee, as the third largest party, if the Kenya Kwanza government is doing good, we will support without fear, without favor. The difference, let me explain to you.
What I'm asking is, just hold on, Honorable Kenan. What I'm asking is because there's the majority party, there's the minority party, and then there's Jubilee as a parliamentary party.
Absolutely.
So what is your role in Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group? Because you attend those meetings.
If we are invited and they are doing good, we will go.
So what is the difference? Why not just join the majority side?
I think you need to understand the workings of parliament. Once you have been recognized as a parliamentary party, it's up to you to decide. And for a party to qualify as a parliamentary party, you must get 5% of the members of that particular house. 5% of 349, 350 is about 18. And we have, in the National Assembly, we have close to 28. So that gives us the identity. Two, before recently, before we were recognized as a parliamentary party, we were under the ambit of the leadership of Azimio. In terms of constitution of committees, in terms of the whipping, in terms of all parliamentary activities, we are no longer under their ambit. And therefore, we as a committee, we as a party, will get what is rightfully ours based on our numbers. I think that's the difference now you understand.
Okay.
That's why the other time when I wanted to contest the committee, Azimio wrote a letter to say, so-and-so cannot contest. This is the most undemocratic group in parliamentary history that I've ever seen. And that's why, as we go on, today, I'll tell you this. Take this. It's not a sweeping statement.
Yes.
If they have to call their numbers, I can tell you close to 60 members in their coalition do not subscribe to what they do. And I challenge them to call for a BG. They have removed all of us actually from their group, which is a good thing. I challenge them to call for a roll call. To call for a roll call and see the numbers that they have. Now they are minority.
What group have you been removed from?
In the initial Azimio group. Anybody who disagrees with them, they are removed.
Which one? What group? Where?
They used to have an Azimio group immediately after the election. Anybody who disagrees with the thinking of whoever is their leader is removed from the group. You just find yourself, you are a membership of this group.
It's a WhatsApp group.
WhatsApp group. Groups that were there.
Okay, all right.
But even in the House.
I just wanted to hear this.
So these guys are a threat to democracy, actually.
Okay, then who's your party leader?
My party leader is the Honorable Sabina Wanjiru Chege.
What happened to Uhuru Kenyatta?
You know, don't bring those other politics. For now,
no, it's not other politics.
We as Jubilee Parliamentary Group.
I thought he's the party leader on record.
For us as a parliamentary group, the Jubilee Parliamentary Group have made a decision. The other politics, we will discuss. Some of the issues are in court. But for now, our whip, our acting party leader.
All right.
You understand that. Okay. But there's one thing that you have assumed.
No, I'll come back to you. I want to hear from Diana. But it's also interesting what you say, that she is your parliamentary leader, an acting party leader, but the issues you don't get into...
issues that are in court.
But even that is in court. Acting party leader is in court.
You see, we as parliamentarians, you need to understand, we have a parliamentary group. And all of us, out of 34, 32 subscribe to what I'm saying right now. Okay. There are 2 are still undecided.
One of them is the whip of Azimio.
Well, he has technically defected to ODM. He's an ODM MP, no longer Jubilee.
No, he's not here. Let's not talk about him. Diana, tell me, your assessment of Parliament in 2023, despite all these political agreements or disagreements, what do you say?
Thank you. I think this particular House of Parliament, one, in terms of setting institutions to try and assert Parliament, we've seen them doing fairly well. I particularly am pleased with the fact that we have 6 audit committees. I think that's a step in the right direction as Parliament seeks to increasingly assert their oversight mandate. What else? The institutions have been set up, okay? Yeah. What I note, Sam, as somebody who follows parliamentary business, is what happens in the committee is very different from what happens in the main house and in the voting. The contradiction is out of this world. If you read parliamentary committee reports, members of parliament understand their work. They are intellectuals. I went through, say, the finance bill report, and they listened. But when it came to the vote, I do not know what guides them at that point. Something just shifts, and all the reasoned arguments that you have seen in committee reports are thrown out. The vetting of all the nominees by the president for appointment. The parliamentary committee, they read the constitution, they look at what is happening, integrity issues, history, diversity and inclusion, but when it comes to the vote, all that does not count.
Who writes the reports?
Good question. but the parliamentary staff write the report, but those are live discussions of members of parliament sitting in committees. I am almost inclined to move an amendment that where there is a contradiction between the committee and the main house, can we go with the committee? Because Kenya would be safer if we were to be guided by what Parliament discusses there. The NADCO committee is an indictment on Parliament because everything that was discussed by NADCO is the mandate of Parliament. We did not need to go to Bomas at all. To audit our constitution and what reforms we need, it is because Parliament did not have the environment to discuss national interest in the right way that we had to get a funny dialogue. And immediately thereafter, where does that report go? To Parliament. These people wasted our resources for that long for us to restart the process again in Parliament. But the biggest test, there are a number of laws, and the Deputy Speaker has highlighted the new health laws that were fast-tracked, that we are now contesting in court. Again, a problem of representation and parliamentarians increasingly being loyal to party leaders as opposed to their ultimate bosses, the people. The health laws as enacted, they create huge problems around devolved function. Health is a devolved function. It's not clear who will get what resources. The transition around NHIF to the Social Health Insurance Fund. The declaration that if you have not subscribed to the Social Health Insurance Fund, you will not get any other monies. The Housing Fund. There is a unique structural interdict by the court that it is unconstitutional, but go and comply. Parliament, I keep saying, it has intellectuals. They know what they are doing, and they are setting up the country by passing bad laws. All these issues of constitutionality, if you check the Hansard, they were raised in that particular house.
Right.
But we as a people have to increasingly go back to court and question what is happening in that particular realm. Privatization Act. The Parliament would even have ceded their power to legislate and represent the people and cede that to the executive. Is something that I agree now with Honorable Bai that we need, that we need to check the recall clauses for Parliament. It's taking 2 years is too long. The foundation needs to be right for any particular house.
Even though the privatization law has a section that requires parliamentary ratification.
But by the time you allow that to be tabled without fighting back, I engaged the Public Debt and Privatization Committee, again, where the executive was proposing every time to breach the debt limit, the debt requirement, and come and notify Parliament of that particular breach. Luckily, they pushed back and got back their mandate. Where we are with the economy, if we are to get out of it, Parliament has to know that they are the carriers of the public purse and take it over.
Oh, all right.
They have not done that well. They have played politics with our economy.
Played politics with the economy. Deputy Speaker, there are a few issues that I want you to respond to. For instance, that question about you find very fruitful deliberations at the committee level, but they are not necessarily reflected in the final decision of the House. Case in point, the Finance Act of 2023, I think on record it is one of the most debated any piece of legislation in the country. But then a lot of submissions that were made by stakeholders, they were actually ignored. Remember, specifically on this question of housing levy that has now been rendered unconstitutional, there was an initial levy of 3% with a cap of 5,000. Kenyans said that is too much. We don't want it. The new rate was 1.5% without a cap, and they said it is from the public participation. So what is the level of accountability between public participation and what the House eventually passes?
No, actually, the example that you're using about the Finance Act is that a lot of the proposals that were made during public participation were actually incorporated. A case in point is many people, initially, the housing levy was supposed to be a saving, and a saving that you could access back in 7 years as any contributor. Mm-hmm. But during that time, at that time, during the public, they said we don't want to be forced to save. And so it was changed to a levy, to a tax, essentially. And that is from what the public said. In fact, they had been threatened court action.
Wait, the action is what the public said or what the members of parliament understood it?
No, this was at public participation. And in fact, the amendment to change it was moved by the chairperson of the finance committee in the House.
So they said they don't want the saving, so take it as tax.
Yes. It was raised actually by the public. In fact, when I listen to people saying this, I always say, do you remember that initially it was supposed to be a saving? There was many representations made to the committee. And the committee actually had over 1,600 memorandums that was delivered to it. And it is part of the things that was raised. And then on that account, they moved that amendment. On the issue of content creators, for example, the content creators being taxed at, I think it was 15%. It was reduced because, again, that was raised at public participation. If you remember also the extra tax that was going to be put on human hair and so on, again, that was changed because of what people said during public participation. So there was various amendments that were triggered by public participation. So people say that don't listen to what the public say. Actually, there were changes made as a result of that. In fact, I remember very clearly, and Honorable Mbui will confirm this. At some point, remember we had said there was a place where 15% had been proposed. And then the committee said, after listening to the members of the public, they were reducing it to 5%. The opposition actually voted against that amendment. And I remember telling, and Honorable Mbui, you remember, I said, do you guys realize that you're actually voting to increase the tax? But it's because it had been moved by the majority and moved by the chairperson of the finance committee. They decided anything that's coming from this other side, we must. Yes. So sometimes they were not even sure what they were voting against. So yes, and that is what happened. And allow me, don't interrupt me because you didn't interrupt me. It's a clarification
of what you just said, because you said that the participation is what led to the decision on the housing levy. We saw employers, Federation of Kenya Employers, associations of different employees coming on stage, and I think she was actually there.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't want it, it's too expensive for running of the business. And you converted it into a tax. So how did you arrive at that decision? And
at a lesser percentage that was said.
Without a cap.
No, you know what you're saying is just because the Federation of Kenya Employees or a few people did go and speak to the committee, it is not it's not what they suggest that's going to take the day. Actually, it's what the majority
of the contributions are opposed to it.
No, they were opposed to it being a saving. They were not opposed to it being a tax. And then, let me just also explain the challenge that Parliament has. As the Honorable Mbui was saying, that they feel that the opposition, they're not being heard and so on. But I can almost name, and I want you to always look back. The good thing is Parliament has actually the Hansard.
Right.
And the proceedings are live. You can go and look at them. Look at the opposition side anytime. It is nearly empty. And I can name for you which opposition members are the ones who speak. Honorable Mbui is one of them who's very active. He's always on top of his game on any matter that's being discussed in Parliament. Honorable Nyikal, Honorable Makali, Honorable Anthony Alwoch, Honorable Irene Mayaka. You know them by name. And Honorable Kainan will tell you. Isn't that true? That there is only a handful of people who come to Parliament. So even if the opposition believes that, that Parliament is being used as a rubber stamp, why are you not present in the House?
So Deputy Speaker...
Yes, and Gishengo, actually, yep. you follow Parliament. And I would like you, because I know sometimes you do rating of Parliament and so on, I want you to say, at any one time, how many members of the opposition were in the House on any given date. Give us a rundown, do a random...
Challenge taken.
Yes, you're taking that challenge. I want you to do that. You'll be able to see. So it is so well to come here on national television and complain. But why are you not in the House when you're required? And believe me, any time, in fact, the members that I've said here, they have actually given proposals on amendments. In fact, recently, I had some amendments to a certain law. And then it turned out that the same amendments I proposed were the same ones that Honorable Anthony Alwoch had actually proposed. So I ended up saying, let me stand down my amendments. I agree. And we merged them. Honorable Makali, during the time of the privatization bill, he gave very good proposals on the changes that were made. And he was in agreement with the chairperson of that particular committee. I think one of the finance committees. Again, in many cases, this was agreed to. During the time of the Social Health Insurance Fund debate, look at the proposals given by Honorable Nyikal. Honorable Nyikal has been in the health sector in the government for many years. He has been a principal secretary. Again, all the proposals that he gave for amendments carried the day. And he was just a one-man show. He was alone. But he moved them, and they were taken. Honorable Mbui, how many times have you given sound proposals in the House and they have actually carried the day and you have been supported by the majority side, not even the minority side? Because usually you're sitting there by yourself. Yes, but I know that. And then sometimes...
You sit in a seat that none of us here does. But when you was talking about attendance of sittings, how is that? With or without minority or majority, how is attendance in Parliament? Because historically, members of Parliament are not always there.
Yes, you know, attendance is one thing. You can attend and sit there and not say anything. Usually, what you notice in Parliament is the contributions. And that's why I can tell you, I can name the ones who contribute. I can name, and remember, whenever there is...
so how is it? Out of 349 members, how do you see that?
No, whenever the order paper is posted, it's sent to everybody's, receives it on message, it's available in the table room, etc. And members are allowed to give, if they want to have a proposal, they do it in writing, a proposal for amendment. They have it in writing, and they deliver it to the Speaker.
Okay.
And usually, I have never seen a situation where the Speaker has not approved a request for amendment. All of them are approved without exception.
Unless they are unconstitutional.
Unless they are unconstitutional. Okay. But you know, most of the time, because the members of Parliament, even when they propose their amendments, they normally run it through the legal department. So the legal department normally has checked it already. And all of them, in this, the time I've served as Deputy Speaker, I have never seen any amendment by a member that has been declined by the Speaker. And they usually come to the House. Speaker, and in most of the cases, they are actually approved.
We need to take a short break here on Daybreak as we continue to take a walk back on the year 2023, the major decisions that have affected how the country moves in the next phase. We're back in a moment.